Now, obviously, we've talked about a lot of things that increase productivity and some things that reduce productivity and why productivity matters. But what I want to talk about today is something that people don't often think of as an obstacle to productivity, and that is blame, assigning blame. And the flip side, to kind of flesh that out, because you may be thinking, what do you mean? That if we can, within our own hearts and minds, shift away from blaming, and I'm not talking about shifting away from holding accountable, but shifting away from pointless, corrosive blaming and embracing within ourselves the habit of taking responsibility, of owning all of the things that we do, then our productivity is going to go up, our peace of mind is going to increase, and maybe, just maybe, you will be able to affect the culture where you're working, where your community is, if that culture is already too heavily weighted towards the blame game. So if you've been in construction any time at all, you've probably recognized that that industry tends to be obsessed with who they can blame, who we can blame, who can be blamed for the things that don't make the money, for the mistakes, right? Well, the first commercial job that I ever had, the first commercial company that I worked for, was a great company, heavy hitters, good guys. But after about 2 weeks, I realized, whoa, these guys are a little obsessed with assigning blame. Oh, well, maybe that's just to increase accountability and sort of reduce mistakes and sort of penalize the things that they don't want. So I thought, well, I'll just sort of learn from it. But as time went on and I stayed there, I realized, wait a minute, this company culture is obsessed with blame. From the very top, from the main office, blame inside the main office, just outside the main office on the superintendents and the project managers, right on down to the foreman, and even within the working partnerships and trios and the smaller subset crews on a bigger job. The whole thing about pointing the finger of blame was endemic, and it put a bad taste in my mouth. Now, I understand, I'm not so naive that I think that when someone makes a costly mistake, they shouldn't be blamed. What I'm saying is that after responsibility has been assigned, and if a consequence needs to happen, then stop it with the blame game. It becomes leverage in interpersonal relationships that, from my perspective, seems like the crab syndrome. You're familiar with the crab syndrome? That if you have a bucket of live crabs, and they're squirming and they're flailing and they're unhappy, and one of them happens to get a claw or a leg up over the top of the bucket and begins to do a one-arm pull-up and get himself up out of there, you know what happens, right? The crabs that see him pulling himself out, breaking free, reach up and grab him by the back end and suck him back down into the melee. It began to feel like that was what was going on at this great company in terms of what they built and the quality and they were a solid company. So, after a while, partially because of that, and primarily because I wanted to find a way to make more money, I left them. I was back with them for a short period of time, but the culture of blame was part of what ran me off. All right, so stepping aside from the specific company culture, just generally, and maybe especially if we let that grow in our own homes, blame occupies way too much space in our minds. The person we're blaming, what's the metaphor, is living rent-free in our minds, or the event is living rent-free in our minds. Blame is closely related to resentment, right? In fact, resentment sort of generates and grows in connection with blame. And whose fault is it? There are few things that suck more productivity out of us than that. And you say, well, what do you mean, Wadsworth? When you're working, you can manipulate, you can run the backhoe, you can make the cuts, you can run the nail gun, you can roll the trusses, you can rod the concrete, even if you blame somebody. Yes, but in your idle hours, when you're driving back and forth, when you should be planning what it is you're doing either on the job or in your personal life, instead, we kind of circle the drain with the blame, the resentment, the blame, particularly if there's some aspect to the blame or if you're receiving blame that's just not fair. Now contrast that with the impulse to take ownership. Blame grows when the person that's being blamed is resisting, maybe proclaiming innocence or evidencing frustration at receiving accountability that maybe they don't think they deserve. On the other hand, if you've made a mistake and you throw your hand up and say, yep, that was me, and I'm sorry, and it won't happen again, it diffuses the whole situation, or it can, in a healthy environment. And if it's an unhealthy environment and you're owning your mistakes, yep, that was me. I did that. I cut that beam too short. I ran over that compactor. I backed my truck into the corner of the job shack. Whatever it is, that was me. If you got to fire me, fire me. But let's not waste time. I don't want to hear any more about this. Let me know right now if this is a firing offense or if this is something we can get past. Man, can you see how in a rational world, in a healthy company culture, that might not remove a penalty, but it's darn sure going to increase the way you are respected and your self-respect. No matter what happens or how it goes, you'll always know, yeah, you know what, it was on them because I owned it. Now, inasmuch as this is similar to resentment and therefore forgiveness,